Oh, President Trump getting annoyed at the inability to move legislation on Capitol Hill. Raymond Arroyo sitting in for Laura Ingraham, and we are joined by someone who had no problem moving legislation on Capitol Hill and did it expertly, really led the Republican Revolution, the #1 New York Times bestselling author of Understanding Trump. Newt Gingrich joins us. Newt, thanks for being here.
Raymond, how are you doing?
I'm hanging in there. Now, what do you make of this kind of, I don't even know how to characterize it. I guess you could say it's kind of schoolyard taunting of Mitch McConnell by the president. I mean,
well, I don't think it makes any sense.
Really?
Really. First of all, 49 out of the 52 Republicans voted yes, so
right.
It's an overwhelming vote. Second, there were 16 Democratic no's for every Republican no. Yet you see all these conservatives deciding to pick a fight with McConnell. They're not out picking a fight with the 10 Democrats from states Trump carried. I mean, any two of those Democrats out of 10 could have, in fact, carried the bill.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's totally misplaced. And furthermore, McConnell's going to still be there. I mean,
right.
You don't pick a fight with a guy you need as a teammate. And they're not going to replace McConnell, and so I don't understand what the president thinks he's accomplishing.
So why do you think the president continues to do it? What's the strategy here, Newt? Does he think this is going to frighten McConnell?
I don't think there is one. I think the president has this instinct for being aggressive, and he's unhappy, but he also doesn't want to take responsibility. He talks about how Mitch has to get this done. Well, this is a team. The president is a key member of the team. You could argue he's the leader of the team. So if things aren't working, maybe he needs to take part of the ownership here.
I said this yesterday. The president did, it seems to my eye, he took a kind of observer status here during the repeal and replace debate, and deferred it basically to congressional leaders to take care of. He didn't ever put forward his own 5-point plan and go out and sell it in these districts that you might have been able to switch some of these senators, states where you could have switched some of these senators, perhaps to his own side. He didn't do any of that.
Right. I mean, there, as I said, there's a state where the president got 68% of the vote. It has a Democrat. Well, what if the president were out there in that state pushing hard, moving votes? I look at this and I don't get it. I mean, maybe I just lack strategic cleverness, but this is not how I would try to tackle this. I think that it doesn't do the president any good. It doesn't advance the game. It puts us in a situation, candidly, where we have greater difficulties, not less difficulties. And I don't see why would you think that's to your advantage? Now, he's doing brilliantly with North Korea because he has a strategy. He has some great advisors in General Mattis and General Kelly and General McMaster, and they have a real game plan. But I don't see the same kind of strategic thinking domestically, and that's really unfortunate because this stuff's really a big deal, and we need to work as a team. We have the tax cut coming down the road. They've got the debt ceiling coming down the road. They have the budget coming down the road. All of these things require a Republican team in the House and the Senate as well as the presidency, and I don't see how this particular strategy gets them there.
I want to play this for you. This is the president yesterday in Bedminster, and again, he continues to call out Mitch McConnell.
Senator McConnell considers stepping down as majority leader. There's some conservative analysts, including Sean Hannity, say it's time for him to retire.
Well, I'll tell you what, if he doesn't get repeal and replace done, and if he doesn't get taxes done, meaning cuts and reform, and if he doesn't get a very easy one to get done, infrastructure, if he doesn't get them done, then you can ask me that question.
So what is that? Yes,
you can ask me the question. That means ask me that question. Let's hope he gets it.
What do you make of that? I mean, again...
Well, notice the grammar. He. It ought to be we. We are a team. We as a team have to get this done. I'm going to work with the rest of the team to get this done. I mean, just notice the very grammar of setting it off to one side as though somehow the president wasn't engaged in this very process. And you have to ask yourself, how does he think this is going to work?
Yeah.
And that's why I find it very puzzling. Frankly.
No, it's troubling. We're speaking.
I'm a big. I'm a big
supporter.
fan of the president's, and I find this particular ploy to be one of the least effective things I've seen him do.
We're speaking with Newt Gingrich. It's the Laura Ingraham Show. It's the other troubling piece of this is. I heard a commentator the other day, and I think it's infernally stupid, the analysis, but they said, look, the president is like the boss, and Americans understand when the boss gives you an order, you go out and you execute or you're out of there. Well, that's not the way Washington works. It's not the way this republic is constructed.
But it's not the way the Constitution works.
Right.
How could any conservative, who, if they believe in the Constitution, suggest that the Congress should abdicate its responsibilities and have the president's boss? I always told people, I never worked for Ronald Reagan. I worked with Ronald Reagan. I didn't work for George H.W. Bush. I worked with George H.W. Bush. I didn't work for Bill Clinton. I worked with Bill Clinton. Because these are co-equal branches, and frankly, if you look at the Constitution, it is the Congress which comes first. Because the Founding Fathers believed the Congress should be the closest to the American people.
Yeah, I want to shift to North Korea, Newt. Of course, huge headlines being made. The president this morning tweeting out that everything's locked and loaded should Kim Jong-il not find another path. Military solutions are now fully in place. North Korea should act wisely. Your reaction to what you're hearing from the president, and again, he's not backing off at all. He's doubling down. Now, Angela Merkel today said, this is creating tensions for the whole international community. Your thoughts?
Well, I think it depends on what Angela Merkel means by it. Donald J. Trump is not creating tension. The North Koreans are creating tension. I mean, we're faced with an existential threat that they're trying to build nuclear weapons that they can deliver to American cities. As you know, Raymond, I do 2 newsletters a week that are free at Gingrich Productions, and my newsletter, which I was just writing just before calling in, is going to be about what's an American city worth. If we get hit, there was a study done in Long Beach by the Rand Corporation that if Long Beach were hit with a nuclear weapon, a modest nuclear weapon, half the size of the current North Korean weapons, it's about 60,000 dead and 150,000 wounded. Now remember how horrified we were with around 3,000 people on 9/11. And you have to ask yourself, in terms of investing in civil defense, in terms of investing in a more robust anti-missile system, what is it worth to save an American city in terms of the human cost that you would encounter if we actually lost a city? And I think this is a national conversation we need to have. We're not prepared for the kind of threats we're starting to face. And I think that's something we have to work at, and we need an honest national conversation about what we need to do.
Now, I noticed, I saw the piece in Politico today where you said we're not ready for an attack from North Korea. Do you really believe that? You really believe that we can't protect Guam, we can't protect Hawaii, we can't protect our West Coast?
Look, I think the odds are about 50-50 that we could stop a single missile. But if they could fire 10 missiles simultaneously, I doubt very much if we have the capacity to stop them right now. And remember, you only have to have one hit. This is where people who remember the Cold War era misunderstand what the threat is. One nuclear weapon in one city would change permanently the nature of America.
Right. Because
it would be so horrifying. The estimates in a study that was done in Atlanta in 1986, the estimates were that you could have up to 300,000 burn victims. This was a larger weapon, about a 550 kiloton weapon. You could have up to 300,000 burn victims. The total number of burn beds in America that year was around 1,500.
Unbelievable.
So you literally would have 200 burn victims for every burn bed. And remember, about 80% of those burn beds are actually occupied at any given time by people who have genuine life-threatening situations.
That would be a catastrophe.
I think that if we're going to take North Korea seriously, we're going to have to rethink both our active defense and we're going to have to rethink civil defense.
Wow. I want to play this for you. This was the president talking about North Korea vis-a-vis China and its involvement. And I'll get your reaction.
I think China can do a lot more, yes. China can, and I think China will do a lot more. Look, we have trade with China. We lose hundreds of billions of dollars a year on trade with China. They know how I feel. It's not going to continue like that. But if China helps us, I feel a lot differently for trade.
Is it in the Chinese interest to help us reduce the threat from North Korea?
Well, I think it's probably in their interest to avoid a war. Mm-hmm. I think up until now, they have felt relatively comfortable that North Korea was much more of a problem for us than for them, and they didn't mind it being a problem for us. But I think there's also something to worry about, which is I was reminded yesterday, because I'd written 2 novels about Pearl Harbor,
right,
and somebody who had helped me do the research reminded me, when the United States embargoed aviation fuel to Japan, petroleum products, in the summer of 1941, it led directly to the Japanese decision to attack us, because they concluded that we were, in fact, going to break their capacity within 2 or 3 years, and they either had to attack then or they would lose the ability to defend themselves. So let's say that we could, the biggest thing you could do is cut off all the flow of oil into North Korea. Let's say we did that. It's possible that would lead them to negotiate. It's also possible it would lead them to launch an attack. And that's why I think you have to assume, if you're doing national security planning, you always have to start with worst case, because if you design a solution to the worst case, everything else will be taken care of. Mm-hmm. But if you kid yourself about what the worst case could be like, you could suffer horrendous casualties.
Newt Gingrich, before I let you go, as you know, I'm a New Orleans native. We recently moved back. I split my time now. New Orleans is making headlines again because over the last few weeks, we have had just heavy rains that have flooded parts of the city after we as a federal government spent literally billions of dollars creating new pumping systems, creating new pumping stations, new canals, reinforcing old canals. What do you think as you look at this? New Orleans having their secondary power source go down at one of the major pumping stations that relieves the backup drainage throughout the city. We have the governor there declaring a state of emergency. Can you believe we're here again? And this isn't a hurricane, by the way. This is just heavy rain.
But look, it tells you about the need to overhaul the entire federal government. I mean, the Army Corps of Engineers is way too bureaucratic.
Yep.
You go back and you look, and as you know, I went to Tulane, and my younger daughter, Jackie, was born in Tulane, in New Orleans. I love the city. But you go back and look, as I did, during the period immediately after Katrina, it's very clear government had failed. This is why I'm always amazed when people pick up on the idea of nationalized health care. I ask them, which part of government do you think is the model for delivering these things? So I'm not at all surprised that once again what you're telling us is government will have failed in New Orleans, and it's visible and it's real.
Yeah. Because
people are going to be flooded. I mean, this is not some accidental theoretical problem.
Right.
This is very real.
Yeah. And again, the president's focus on infrastructure. How do you make that happen? Because, I mean, we have roads and bridges crumbling here in Washington, D.C. We drive over every time we come into the city.
And candidly, part of the way you have to make that happen is getting the U.S. Congress to agree to do things, and part of the way you have to do that is you have to get the U.S. Senate to agree to do things, and that's why the current strategy doesn't make any sense to me. The president is going to need these folks to get stuff done that he wants to get done.
Yep, I agree with you.
It's not going to happen automatically without him actually playing a role.
And should Mitch McConnell waive the filibuster rule, get to a simple majority for all of these bills, 51 votes, period?
I think he may have to keep that in his hip pocket as a possibility. I frankly hate to see it happen because as a conservative, I do think there's a virtue in the Senate being cantankerous and difficult, even though I was Speaker of the House and House members aren't generally pro-Senate.
Right.
But I do think there's a virtue in having a Senate which has slowed down bad legislation and forced us to think things through. But I don't think he can allow the Democratic majority to continue to block everything and just shrug his shoulders and be helpless. I do think the country will demand that we find some solutions.
Very good. Newt Gingrich, #1 best-selling author of Understanding Trump. Our best to Callista, and we'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you.